Right, okay, so welcome back everybody. And so today I thought we'd have a little bit of fun looking at plants and leaves as well. Sorry I didn't tell everyone to get a leaf beforehand, but it suddenly occurred to me it'd be a nice subject to do last night. So I was just walking through my garden and found a fig leaf and thought, oh, that could be interesting. Now Jan's outdone me with her fig leaf because mine's just green and Jan's is looks amazing. So thanks for that, Jan. Right, so we've got quite a few pictures around my screen at the moment. So I've got these because I thought it'd be a bit of inspiration. I found these all on Pinterest. So if you get the chance to have a look on Pinterest, there's some really lovely paintings on here. This is by someone called Mary Gibbs. And what I really liked about this one is obviously the way the wet on wet technique has been used to blend all the different colours. You've got these lovely pinks, purpley violety pinks next to the yellows, which really stands out well. But then you've got a really strong contrast between the really dark deep background and then the leaves standing out above that. So, and I didn't notice until last night, but there's a couple of little birds on there as well, flying through. But we've got quite a few different ideas on there. I talk quite a lot about using masking fluid as well. So potentially you could mask out some, or even use wax resist, like we've just been talking about, to add some of the veins in very delicately, and then peel those away and put the colours back in again really carefully with a pointy small brush. And then over here we've got another one. Oh, there's Lynette. Just put Lynette in. Right, and then over here we've got this really quite lovely sort of scene. We've got a tree in the background with the light coming through on the blue, so a lot of blended colour, but also some quite distinct shapes, which makes me think that some areas have been masked off or just very carefully painted around to lift certain elements up. So if you look on the left hand side of that, you can see those little bits of yellow, and then there's a green sort of rounded shaped leaf, or I don't know, it's got a kind of a solid look to it, but then you've got these nice shadows that have been put underneath. So when you start adding contrast in there and some fine darker edges, you can start to pick out some of that detail on there as well. Now this one down here, I picked this one because I thought this would be an idea for masking out. I don't think it is a masked area with the masking fluid, that is, but potentially you could paint a background in a couple of different colours. So you've got that pink and yellow that have been painted on there, and then the negative shapes, that's the dark greeny mossy sort of colour, has been painted in the background to lift out those shapes. So potentially you could mask these areas off, but it's not always necessary to do that with the masking fluid. And then after all of that's done, some of the berries have been painted in on top of that. So again, you've got this kind of nice wet on wet blended effect on those leaves, which makes quite a nice composition and really nice use of colour as well. Okay, and then over here, this is something I'm going to be playing around with today as well. We've got this really nice tree. So again, if you painted, you leave the tree empty, so you draw the branches of the tree where you want them, and then do a light blue background, and then use negative painting to paint around the branches with a slightly darker blue, so that then you get this kind of some of the branches feeling like they're further away from us, a bit of atmospheric perspective going on in there. So then after all that's done, of course, putting these nice contrasting oranges or browny oranges into the tree trunk, but leaving some of it quite light. So again, you've got contrast between the colours. So you've got this lovely blue against an orange, which really picks out those details, or just makes the whole image stand out a little bit more. And then I did a little leaf yesterday, well, it's Sunday night actually. So I looked at this because again, you've got some nice details in there. I've done one which is using masking fluid, but I've also done one straight painted, which I'll show you in a second. But drawing out the shape using wet on wet technique that we've talked about, and then adding some of the darker details with dry, wet on dry, when it's all dried up. And this lovely shadow using some of the greys that we talked about last week perhaps. So using opposite colours from the colour palette to create these nice greys with a little bit of wet on wet. So you put your wet water down, obviously water's wet, but then you put down your grey on top, so you get this nice shadowing on the leaf to pick it out. Okay, so there's those. Now I'll show you what I've got for you. Now on the website there's a worksheet that I've made for you, which has got all of the techniques that you can try out today, and you can download that and print it off if you want to, or you can just view it on the website at jamie-poole.com. But I'll show you the worksheet. So so this is the first one just here, and the second one just here. So obviously you can see the leaf idea that we've got going on there, and over here there's a number of different basic sort of leaf techniques, if you like. Some areas using tissue paper, some areas using masking tape, sorry, not masking tape, masking fluid. And then over here, what I was just discussing with you is drawing and painting a leaf. So obviously really sort of almost like garish colours, partly because I've lightened that one up, but it's just focusing on the technique. So the first bit of this leaf was red and oranges using wet on wet, and I painted it one little bit at a time so I could control where the paint went. And then when it was dried, I used wet on dry with a really small brush over there too. And the little technique at the bottom is about using these colours at the bottom to create a sense of distance, or and mark making to show the leaves and things, which I'll discuss in a few seconds. So that's all on the website, so you can download that and use that if you want to. Okay, so I'll do a couple of little bits on here to show you how it all works. So this is the original sketchbook. I'll just get this out of the way. I really like this picture, so I'll put that on there. Let's put that over there. So yeah, this is my little sketchbook just here, where I've done the things for you to have a look at. So the first one is creating leaf shapes, if you like, using a round brush. So, one thing I found quite useful is if you use a spray bottle. Now this is like a Tresemme heat defense smooth bottle that I've had for years, and it does a really fine spray, and if you spray over your watercolours like that, it sort of gets them going a little bit, loosens them up. It still smells like the stuff that was in it, I think. So I'll get a little bit of green going on. Just come out a little bit for a second. Just make sure that's in focus.
I keep losing you, Jamie.
Do you? Is there anyone else got any problems?
I do, but we've had power cuts in Bedford, so I was assuming it was a power cut.
Oh right. Well,
It keeps cutting in and out. I've got house alarms going off in the background, so apologies if anybody can hear it. I've got this muted.
Yeah.
But I keep losing you too.
Oh, okay. Well, if it becomes a problem, I don't know if anyone else has got a problem with it, then let me know. I don't know what I can do.
Yeah, I lost you a couple of times.
Yeah? Alright, well, we'll keep going and see what happens, because I don't know what else I could do at the moment to sort of change that, but we'll see how it goes. So the first technique here is to create leaf shapes. So let's just find a space here. So drawing a very sort of thin line and then painting your leaf shapes. Use the point of the I'll come in a bit closer now. There we go. That's better. And then using the point of the brush and then pressing down and releasing the pressure. So you're using the belly or the base of the brush to create the leaf shapes. Press down, loosen up, and then do the other half. So there's all sorts of different leaves you can try out with this. They're like little motifs, if you like, but they're quite good to put into backgrounds if you're just looking for something to add in, to add detail. And they're quite nice to practice with brush strokes and things. And then while it's wet you can also put in another colour. So I'm going to just have a bit of a play around with the colour.
Jamie, we're not seeing the bottom of what you're painting.
Okay, just come back out again. There, that's better. There. Okay, and then I'm going to add some nice blues into there and let it do its thing. So you can kind of just let the paint do its thing with the water. Bit of a dark blue in there. So that's one idea. Now on here there's a number of different types of things you can try out. So I've got ferns on there and different, just different shaped leaves and things. Now this one just here has something else you can try out. I can't do everything because obviously things need to dry, but this one using a very thin brush, so this is a 0 sized brush or a 00 sized brush, and basically I can do it on this one actually. So once the leaf is nice and dry, you can then paint. Oh, Lynette's back. Put Lynette back in. Okay, so you can do a nice thin line, wet on dry. So when the leaves are dry, you can add in things like veins and that back over the top. So this was a bit like the one I've just done, in that there were two colours on there, and I let the colours sort of run into each other, let it dry, and then work back over.
Jamie, I don't know whether your focus is quite right. I can't read the words.
What, the words on my book?
Oh.
On here? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah?
It's a bit better, but it's a bit fuzzy.
Yeah. Might be because I'm a bit. There.
Is it all on the website?
Yeah, they're all on the website. Look, if I do this,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to see it as well. There you go. So that's what I've just painted that little bit just there, haven't I? Yeah. Okay. Now the next thing I want to show you is this technique just around on the bottom there, the green one. So come back out again now. So this one is quite useful for doing trees and bushes that are in the background. So first of all, you need to do an area wet on wet. So you put the water down on the surface. Get some colour. Put it down so it kind of spreads out a little bit. And then what you want is a flat brush to make the marks that go around the edge to create this kind of bushy effect. I'm going to put those on there. And find my flat brush just here. So a flat-ended brush, a bit like that one. Now we're not using the wedge sort of end of it, so we're not creating wedge shapes like this. We're actually using the corner of the brush on the edge. I'll zoom in a little bit again, probably lose it. There we go. So use the edge of the brush to almost like stippling. So I'm using the corner, not the flat-ended area. So this is going wet on dry from wet on wet, from the wet on wet area, to create these loose stipply effects around the edge, a bit like some trees or something that you would see from a distance. And you can layer these up on top of each other with different colours to build it up, which is what I want to do in just a second. And that's on the worksheet as well for you to try out. And then you could add some more tone in there too. And then when it's dry, you can add more layers on top. Okay, that's that one. And the other one to try out, which I've now run out of room for. So I'll turn this sheet over. Is you'll need a pencil. So first of all, think about 3 or 4 bushes or trees or whatever that are in a row next to each other, going off into the distance. Like that. It's a similar thing to what we've just been looking at, only this time we're using specific colours, so or more specific colours. You can play around with different ones as you want. So on this sheet just here, which is also online, you can see that I've got cadmium red, ultramarine and cadmium yellow, which I've used to sort of create these different effects of the bushes going into the background. Oops, just put that over there a second. So
Jim, would you mind saying those colours again, please?
yeah, sure, yeah. I'll put them on there, look. I'll put them up here. There you go. Alright? So take the cadmium red first of all, which is that one, and mix it with a bit of ultramarine, and you get this kind of, it's not so much on the picture that I showed you, but it becomes like a purpley sort of bluey colour, and that will be on the first little bush, which is furthest away from us as well. And you can go on to the second one a little bit too, and then I'm going to darken that down slightly, add a little bit of shadow just underneath there. So we're imagining here that the light is coming across a bit like that there. And then I'm going to get the ultramarine, and I'm using also, one thing I didn't mention there is I'm using this green here, which is a hooker's green from my palette, and I'm going to apply that onto my next bush just here, and then also transfer a little bit of that over to the second one and the third, just a little bit. And then I'm going to take that green that I've just used and darken it down again. So we're getting more bolder colours as we approach, as we get closer. Put some water down. Now at this stage it needs to dry. So when that's dried off a little bit, I'll come back and I'll be using some of the techniques that I've just shown you. So that'll be the...
Losing what you're doing again, Jamie. It's too hard. You see, you've got a beautiful view of your palette, but very little of the
yeah, there you go. Alright.
Thank you.
It's because I'm concentrating on what I'm doing. There you go. So I've created almost like these three spheres, or four spheres, that are going off into the distance, which I'll then let dry and I'll come back to, and then I'll start using more layers of colour, but adding a little bit of a stippling effect, which is what I just showed you a few minutes ago with the corner of the flat brush. Oops, sorry about that. It's my doodles. So I'll be using that back over the top, remembering of course that we've got this shadow that's going to be cast on one side and a lighter area just on the top, and then of course we can add in some ground as well underneath of that. Okay, so there's quite a few different things to try out, different shaped leaves and things. Now what I'm working on at the moment, I'll just move all this out of the way. So much stuff out. Just put that aside. So I've taken this picture as the inspiration for the next piece of work that I'm doing. I'll just see if the other camera's a little bit better. So we've been looking at these different leaves, and in the sketchbook and on the worksheets we've got this leaf that I did here. This one was basically from another painting that I found. So if you draw out the shape of the leaf and then start working in, looking very closely at where the colours are, you can use wet on wet perhaps to begin with, and then when it's dry you can work back into it with the details. Obviously these details are quite basic, but there's also a lot of shadow and things that you can take note of if you've got a leaf in front of you. So on this one we've got all the nice dark browns and things casting a shadow from the other side, so that's quite good to do. But I was talking a little bit earlier about some of the artists that we've been looking at. So I've got these two just here, I've got this one as well, and you can see perhaps that the background has been painted first, and then the negative shapes, which I mentioned earlier, have then been applied back over the top. So here's 2 fig leaves. So this is my fig leaf just over here. It's a bit wrinkly and mashed up now because I picked it last night. It's gone a bit soft, but just here, look, to bring out those shapes of the leaves, I first of all painted the surface so it looked a little bit like this when I painted it. So the whole of the page was wet first of all, and then I applied the colour onto the paper at one end, tipped the board up to let the colours blend and bleed over, and then it softens gradually, and then I did the same on the other side to create this kind of lovely soft effect. Then when that was dry, drew the leaves on, and then started to build up these layers of colours in the background over the top of the background to bring forward these shapes of leaves. So when that's getting pretty close to dry, I did that while I was waiting for everyone to show up. When that's dry, what I'll do is I'll start working in with some of these details. So what I could potentially do there is I could use some masking fluid to put the veins in and so forth as well. Okay, and then the second one I'm going to play around with today is, it's not the same colours, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, I'm going to draw a tree onto here, and I'm going to try the background to again doing negative shapes to make the branches look like they're a bit further away.
Are you going to paint all that in masking fluid?
No, I don't think so. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work around the background on this one. But you know, I could try out a bit of the old masking fluid on there as well. I haven't really talked much about that yet, but I'll show you something that I did mean to show you. Quite a lot to think about. So this one just here, I bring in a bit closer. So on this one just here, what I did was I painted the background with like a pale green. Then I used the silicone blender, which is one of these, to get these like really scratchy loose marks on the page. So I dipped it into the masking fluid, and I'll do a little example of one of these as well as we're working. So basically dipped it in like that, and then squirreled it around and made all these nice marks. Let it dry, then put a darker colour over the top and use the edge of my brush to get these marks on the edge. Peeled away the masking fluid to reveal the yellow underneath, so you end up with this kind of scratchy surface. And the same thing is what I've done over here too. So here I painted the background, put the masking fluid on with a brush, then painted a darker colour over the top, and peeled away, when it was dry, peeled away the masking fluid. And the same with this, but with the silicone blender or spreader, which is this thing here that I've talked about in previous lessons too. So these are nice things to experiment with. You can see the different marks that you can get, which could be really nice in the background for, you know, very loose stipples and things like that, for leaves in the distance and stuff. So just some things to play around with and experiment with, and then you know, it'd be quite good once you've tried out a few of these techniques to try perhaps a leaf next. And then as you know, what I've done is found some images to inspire me or to work from. And again, you know, in the background areas of these, you could try the salt again, you could try the couscous and the rice back over the areas while they're wet too.